I watched Blair Witch, a found footage movie found for free on Tubi. And before I get started, just let me say that I have already recorded this review. This review already exists. However, for some reason there are audio issues with it. And to be completely honest, I didn't want to put anybody through that. I had a lot of times where the audio was cutting out. I don't know exactly what I did, but we're going to try this again, and hopefully this recording doesn't have that same problem. So, Blair Witch is a sequel to The Blair Witch Project, the first movie. It's about Heather Donahue, the girl from the first movie, her brother, who was very, very young when she went missing. He sees a video on YouTube that purports to be footage that was found in the Black Hills that seems to have Heather in it. Now, it doesn't look like Heather to me, but, you know, who knows? Maybe they couldn't get the actress back. Maybe she's changed. I don't know. But anyway, so the brother wants to go looking for her. His friends happen to be doing a documentary that's necessary for school, so they decide to document it. One of the things that they have is these little GPS-connected Bluetooth cameras. And I think they're in the movie as like a way for them to do multiple takes. You know what I mean? If a take doesn't go right, then you've got multiple camera angles to do it from. Something tells me that was the idea behind it, because they don't make a lot of sense in universe. These little things, and this comes up later, and it ends up pissing me off. These little things they have GPS, they're Bluetooth, they're connected via Wi-Fi, some kind of mobile data connection. Because they're out in the middle of the forest, right? But cell phones aren't getting reception out there, so first of all, I don't know what the data's transmitting to. But secondly, not once in the entire movie do they need to be charged. These little HD cameras that fit right along your cheekbone never need to be charged, and they seem to be on 24/7. So immediately, this movie has me on the back foot. And this is not the first time that I've watched this film. Let me put that out there. I watched this movie in theaters because The Blair Witch Project is one of my favorite films. It is possibly the greatest found footage movie ever made. And I wanted to see what the sequel would be like. The first sequel, Blair Witch Project 2, Book of Shadows, is a weird meta project. I've actually never seen it, but I've seen reviews of it. I have no desire to see it. It's really unrelated to the first one, though. So I was excited for this one when it initially came out. And, well, we'll get to it. So they end up, for the first part of the documentary, they meet up with the people who posted the video online, the ones who found the tape. And they're locals to the area of the US that this takes place in. And they offer to take them, the friends, and the brother to where they found the tape. But they want to come with. They won't just tell them, they want to be part of this, because according to them, the Blair Witch is very real. They've lived here all their lives, and they want to prove it to people. Eventually, they agree. So the whole group takes off into the forest with all their cameras. They've got a drone with them. They've got just about everything you could need. They have tents. One of the things they recount before they go out there is the story of Rustin Parr. And Rustin Parr is where a lot of this movie's troubles stem for me. So, in the original movie, they talk about the story of Rustin Parr. He was this old man who, I believe it was in the 30s into the 40s, somewhere along there, I think he was killed in 1940, so probably the late 30s. He was reported to have killed, I think it was 7 children, left the 8th one alive. And he said he was doing so as a sacrifice to the witch because she told him to. And so that's where a lot of the modern stuff in universe for the Blair Witch comes from. It's the story of Rustin Parr. He would kidnap 2 children, put one into the corner of his basement, and kill the other one to spare the child from the sight of watching another child die. And then he'd kill the one in the corner. That's the story of Rustin Parr. And that's all in the first film. You get it through exposition, through the documentary format, which is what it was really good for. If you are like me and you're a huge fan, you probably also watched, and this is free on YouTube, I would highly recommend it. It's called The Curse of the Blair Witch. And The Curse of the Blair Witch is a mockumentary, so it's its own found footage thing. I would never review it separately because it's a companion piece to the Blair Witch Project. Back in the, when did it come out? Mid to late 90s, when the Blair Witch Project came out, I remember watching this on the Sci-Fi Channel. They presented it as a real documentary, but it was on Sci-Fi and related to a movie, so it obviously wasn't. But I still own this on VHS along with the original Blair Witch Project. And it goes further into detail with fake footage and interviews with people about Rustin Parr, and it gets really deep into it. So anyway, they tell that story of Rustin Parr. And this is really important to later. So they head off into the woods. One of the girls cuts her foot on a rock. And they bandage it up and they keep going. And I have written down here, I'm looking down at my journal. I have written down here in quotes, "That's why Rustin Parr stood in that corner, because somebody said that." I just told you the story of Rustin Parr. In no point does Rustin Parr stand in the corner. He had the children stand in the corner. That was his way of killing them. He would kill one and then the other, and the second one that died was the one that was in the corner. That's the story. But here they say, that's why Rustin Parr stood in that corner, and I don't even remember what it was in reference to. Something about the Blair Witch. So, again, that makes no sense. There's all these cheap jump scares in this movie, and I'm going to spoil the heck out of this movie because spoilers, I don't like it. If you couldn't tell already. They use these cheap jump scares throughout the film. The original had no jump scares. It was completely atmosphere based. This one there are constantly people jumping up out of frame with a "pwee" noise in the background. Like, it's sound design that is meant specifically to just jolt you. And it's really, really annoying. Super annoying. Like, at one point in universe, one of them is like, "Can you stop doing that?" Acknowledging it doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it funny. It doesn't make it scary. It just makes it annoying. And tells us that you did this all on purpose. So it turns out they wake up one morning and there's all these dolls all over the camp, like in the original Blair Witch, the little stick men. They end up finding out that the 2 people that are with them faked the little stick men. So they kick them out and they send them back the way they came. And yeah, it was a dick move. But our main characters are kind of bigger dicks, so I have a hard time feeling bad for them to any degree when it comes to this stuff, because they're really not nice people. So they kept on going without those other 2 people. And then at the end of the day, it turns out they've ended up in a circle. They're right back where they started, their old camp, with the stickmen. So they're really confused about that, but they have to camp, so they camp. That night, well, several things happen. There's all these noises at night, and it's all this yipping, and it's just coyotes. As far as I can tell, those are coyotes. So not really scary. Not if you are grown humans. But they're all scared by these noises. A tree falls on somebody who goes off to pee. One of the friends goes off to pee, and then a tree falls on him, and he gets trapped. And that's kind of all we hear of him. He's kind of out of the movie now. The two that they kicked out come back, and they say, "Oh my god, we've been out here for like 6 days. And then look at them, they haven't gone through it yet," that kind of thing. And they're disheveled and dirty. And it ends up happening that the guy doesn't want to be part of whatever is going on with these people and what's going to happen to them. Has already happened to him, so he doesn't want to go through it again. So he leaves. The girl, his girlfriend, stays with the camp because they have food and she's starving. So she eats. I have a note here that just says the sound design sucks, and it does. I previously reviewed The Wendigo, a very low-budget found footage movie about a Wendigo, and that movie had much better sound design than this one, as far as found footage movie sound design goes, and that wasn't a phenomenally well-done movie for sound design. But this is not... The audio is not put together like a found footage film. It's put together like a Hollywood horror movie, you know? The kind that come out a few times a year and you don't really think about them. Like, I keep thinking of stuff like The Bye-Bye Man, you know, that kind of stuff. That kind of cheap Hollywood dreck. It doesn't have a good found footage movie sound design setup. It's very bad. Though it does have one thing I love. Can you guess what it is? It's the camera whooshing. Camera whooshing is back, baby. I didn't notice it until further into the movie, but especially when they whip their head around, when they're using their ear cameras, it goes... It makes whoosh noises, and I've discovered that I absolutely love the stupid camera whooshing. It adds... So that's a point in its favor. It adds a charm point for me. It's technically bad, but oh boy, I find it fun. The lady who was in the creek earlier and cut her foot ends up pulling a stick bug out of her leg. And then she tries to climb a tree to go get the drone that got stuck in a tree earlier in the movie, and then I think she falls to her death. The characters are really unmemorable. So they end up, the two people that are left, guy and a girl, the guy being Heather's brother. Why did I say Rachel? Heather's brother. They find this house, which seems to be the house from the video, but it's not the house from the first movie. They make sure to say that, which they have to, because the house from the first movie was burned down in like the 60s, which is the point of the movie. There's this weird time loop stuff going on, you know? Like, their tapes were found in the foundation of this old house that burned down in like the 60s, I believe it was. And so that's one of the spooky things about the first movie, is how did it get there? It was covered in layers of sediment where it shouldn't have been there. Modern objects shouldn't have been there, but they were. So this kind of does all that time stuff too, but it does it wrong. It does it so wrong. They get to this house and they're running around and it's spooky. And there's all these crazy noises, and he sees a girl running around, so he runs off. The girl gets pushed into a hole by the guy that they left behind. Couldn't really tell you why. I think he's trying to save her from looking at the Blair Witch, which he says, rest in par understood. I have that written in quotes again. So he pushes her down into like this big hole, and there's this whole claustrophobic underground sequence, which has to be my favorite part of the movie. I think it's really scary, very well done. Would have been better in a different movie, but you know, it's well done. It's a spooky scene. So the girl gets out. She meets back up with the guy. They're running around the house. You see this big giant alien-looking thing. And that's one of the theories about this movie, is that it's aliens. It's not actually the Blair Witch, which is implied in a shot that we see later, where there's all this bright light and this strange kind of humming noise coming from outside. So okay, put in this weird little thing where it might be UFOs. It's just hinted at, but it's possible. The Blair Witch doesn't look anything like what you'd imagine, or how she's described in the first movie. Neither of those things. Not even close to the Todd McFarlane adaptation that he did in, I think, the early 2000s. He did a figure, and that was really cool. I like that design over this alien design, but what are you gonna do? They chose it. So that Rustin Parr understood thing comes back again, and the guy realizes, oh, we have to stand in the corner and not look at it. Don't look at it. If you look at her, that's why she kills you. If you don't look at her directly, then you're safe. So they stand in the corner. The guy ends up looking back because it mimics Heather's voice somehow. And he turns around and gets killed. And then I forget why the lady turns around, but she ends up turning around and getting killed too. And that's the end of the film. This movie is an abomination to the name The Blair Witch Project. It flies in the face of the lore of the original movie. It flies in the face of the lore of the video games, which there were several on the PC, I think back in the early 2000s, that follow this lore. It even doesn't work with the video game that came out a few years ago. Was it already like 2016? 2017? I can't remember. But the video game for the 360, jeez. What's wrong with me? For the Xbone and the PS4. It even doesn't really work along that. And that's a fine game. That's an okay game. Doesn't really relate to a lot of the stuff about the Blair Witch. It kind of uses the name, but it works. But this movie, I really can't say my distaste for it enough. I really don't like this movie. I tried giving it a rewatch on good faith because it is free on Tubi, and I thought, hey, maybe I can recommend it. Maybe I was in a bad mood. That happened when I watched some other movies before. Maybe I was just in a bad headspace and I needed to get it fixed. No. What I am going to do is rate this movie 2 out of 5 stars. I think Adam Wingard did the best job he could. I think they hired him specifically because of his segment in VHS, which was a good segment, but it's a short film. It doesn't equate. It doesn't work. You transfer his ability for action and his tendency toward that into a movie that's supposed to be found footage, that's a long movie, you have clearly a problem. And it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So I can't recommend it. What I would recommend is watching the original Blair Witch Project and the mockumentary that goes with it, The Curse of the Blair Witch. I would recommend watching those two things back to back. Maybe even watch the documentary first, because The Curse of the Blair Witch works so well. And without, we don't really have the website around anymore, unless it's archived out there somewhere. But the website was integral to the story of the movie too. So it kind of helps boost the movie along. And it gives you a little bit extra lore, a little bit extra character to add into the film, to add into the spookiness. But I would recommend the Wendigo over this one. So The 2 out of 5 is simply because it is a well-shot movie. It looks pretty. It has, like, the sound design is high quality, but it doesn't fit the film. So it's a competently made movie. It's just not a competently made found footage. So it gets a 2 out of 5. Thank you for listening to my rant about Rustin Parr and the Blair Witch Project, and since I had to re-record it, I got even more angry with this film. I don't think I'll ever be coming near this movie again. And frankly, I don't think you should waste your time on it. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for stopping by.